The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed like angry insects as I scrolled through social media from my gurney. Heart palpitations. The doctor had said it was stress-induced. At 63, apparently, my body had decided it was done, pretending everything was fine. A notification popped up just as a nurse checked my IV. Melissa had tagged me in a photo. I tapped the screen, expecting maybe a get well message. Instead, I found a perfectly staged family dinner David, my son grinning at the head of my old dining table Melissa, radiant in the chair I had once occupied, and 12-year-old Chloe laughing at something off camera. They were in my house, technically their house, now enjoying what looked like an elaborate homemade meal. The caption made my chest tighten, more than any heart palpitation. Finally, a day without the drama queen. Family dinner is so much more peaceful. Blessed family. Drama-free. 47 likes already. Nancy. My sister-in-law had even commented with laughing, crying emojis. While I lay in an emergency room alone, they were celebrating my absence. Not concerned. Celebrating. The nurse returned with discharge papers. Your son is coming to pick you up. Right? I looked at the timestamp on Melissa's post 20 minutes ago, right around the time the hospital would have called David. He knew exactly where I was. He had chosen the family dinner instead. Actually, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I'll call a taxi. As I waited in the lobby, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I called my real estate agent. Barbara, it's Eleanor Hartwell. Remember that house on Maple Street you said would sell in a week? I'm ready to list it. 3 years earlier, I had thought I was being a perfect mother, but I was actually being a fool. After Tom, my husband of 35 years, died, he left me the house life insurance and enough savings to live comfortably. I was 60, recently widowed, alone in a 4-bedroom house that felt cavernous without his laughter. David had been attentive at first, stopping by daily with groceries and checking on me. He suggested, Mom, maybe we move in temporarily until you decide what you want to do long term. Chloe can stay in her school district and you won't be alone. Melissa assured me it was temporary, maybe a year. I should have suspected when David immediately started talking about property taxes and maintenance costs. Within 6 months, they had moved in completely, and I rented a 1-bedroom apartment across town. What I didn't know was that while I grieved they had been planning this, just temporarily became 2 years, then 3. My belongings disappeared into storage or donation piles. They painted over wallpaper Tom and I had chosen. Visits became awkward, and I felt like an intruder in my own former home. Barbara Henderson answered on the first ring. At 70, she had been selling houses longer than most agents had been alive and wasted no time with pleasantries. Eleanor, I was wondering when you'd come to your senses. Can you meet tomorrow morning? I want it listed immediately. How immediately? I asked. Barbara laughed. Standard disclosure periods still apply. But trust me, houses like that move fast. Fine. But Barbara, I need complete discretion until we're ready to list, and I need to understand my legal position. She nodded. Smart woman. I'll bring your attorney friend, Patricia Morgan. She specializes in family property disputes. The next morning, Barbara arrived with Patricia, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who radiated competence. Patricia laid out the facts. There had been no formal lease agreement, no rent paid. That was good news because I retained full ownership rights. Bad news, they might try to claim tenant protections. We need to be careful, Patricia said. They will likely try to fight this legally. Barbara revealed another complication. Several liens had been filed and released against the property over the past 18 months. Did I know about them? I did not. Home improvement loans all properly documented and paid off, but I never authorized them. Patricia asked when I last checked my credit report. 2 years ago, maybe. She made calls and my stomach sank. If they had been intercepting my mail, there could be financial activity I was unaware of. As Patricia worked, I sat in my kitchen, realizing how naive I had been. While I thought I was being a generous mother, they had been positioning themselves to take everything. Patricia warned me to monitor my accounts immediately. I was finally starting to see the depth of their manipulation. For 3 years, I had been made invisible in my own family, while they systematically managed my finances, intercepted my mail, and curated what I saw. I had been grieving, and they had been exploiting me. My phone rang at 7:23 a.m., David's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail while I made coffee, the first luxury I'd allowed myself in months without needing to justify it. His message confirmed my suspicions. "Mom, we need to talk. There's some crazy woman calling about listing the house. Obviously a mistake. Call me back immediately." "Obviously a mistake," he said, as if the very idea of me making a decision without consulting him was impossible to comprehend. I poured the coffee, letting the silence stretch. Then I smiled, slightly thinking about Melissa's Instagram post from the hospital. It had said everything I needed to know. Finally a day without the drama queen. The next morning, Patricia laid out the full extent of the damage. The mail redirection alone had been going on for 3 years, intercepting bank statements, credit card offers, and investment notices. 18 months ago, fraudulent accounts had started to appear in my name credit cards. I never opened personal loans, even home equity borrowing. All charges were being funneled into David and Melissa's hands, funding vacations, designer clothes, spa treatments, and luxury purchases, while I paid rent on a tiny apartment and worried about my health. It was systematic, calculated, and audacious. I felt a mix of fury, disbelief, and grim satisfaction that I had finally uncovered it. Patricia explained the legal angle. Because there had been no lease agreement, I had full ownership rights. I could sell the house immediately, but eviction and protecting the assets would require precise timing. Even worse, they might attempt to claim tenant protections or argue adverse possession, but the evidence of identity theft and financial fraud made their position weak. Barbara had prepared everything for a swift listing, and Patricia was coordinating criminal charges. This wasn't just financial theft. It was elder abuse identity theft and manipulation designed to isolate me from my own life. By mid-morning, David was calling from various numbers, frantic, demanding explanations, threatening family disaster if I sold the house. Melissa texted incessantly, trying to guilt me to make me doubt my own evidence. But I didn't. I had the proof, every statement, every charge, every forged signature. My phone buzzed again, and I saw Chloe standing on my doorstep, clutching a small suitcase, tears streaming down her face. She explained that her parents had abandoned her with friends while they dealt with the house issue. My heart broke for her. I invited her in, offering comfort and stability, the things her parents had neglected while indulging themselves. Sitting together on my small couch, I explained the situation gently. David and Melissa hadn't saved for their own home. They'd spent lavishly on vacations and lessons, leaving her alone while pretending they were protecting me. Chloe listened with wide eyes, absorbing the unfairness of it all. She understood quickly, much quicker than most adults would. "Grandma," she whispered, "they used me to try to scare you." I nodded. "Exactly. And you didn't do anything wrong. You're safe now." The following weeks were a whirlwind. Patricia coordinated criminal filings while Barbara prepared the house for sale. Every phone call, every interaction from David and Melissa was documented meticulously. Meanwhile, I began organizing the scattered evidence of identity theft, forgery, and misappropriation of funds. Each discovery made the case stronger and my resolve firmer. What had begun as a personal betrayal was unfolding into a legal battle that would expose years of systematic abuse. During the investigation, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jennifer Wells, Melissa's estranged sister reached out. She had lived far away, mostly uninvolved, but she knew of Melissa's past with another elderly relative, her grandmother, who had been left nearly destitute after Melissa had maneuvered for power of attorney under the guise of helping. Jennifer provided documents and testimony about her grandmother's accounts, revealing a pattern identical to what had happened to me. Melissa had exploited an elderly relative before. She was a repeat offender, and now, thanks to Jennifer, the authorities had a history to connect the dots. I remember the first night, Chloe and I sat on the balcony of my small apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and watching the sunset. It felt surreal, a life reclaimed. She was finally safe in a home without manipulation, without lies. We talked about everything she had missed, and I assured her that the house sale was necessary to protect both her and me from further abuse. She nodded solemnly, already grasping truths most adults struggle to accept sometimes. The people who say they love you are the ones who betray you most deeply. Meanwhile, the investigation uncovered even more. The fraudulent accounts had been carefully managed payments made from my redirected funds to maintain appearances. Every charge, every trip, every lavish expense was calculated to create the illusion of normalcy, to make me appear irresponsible if I ever questioned it. The filings for guardianship had already begun. They were preparing a case to declare me incompetent, to take control of everything, including my granddaughter, all while maintaining a facade of concern. The thought made my blood run cold. They hadn't just been stealing. They had been plotting to erase my autonomy entirely. By the time criminal charges were filed, the web was fully visible. Identity theft, elder abuse, credit fraud. David and Melissa's actions were no longer just family betrayal. They were crimes with victims beyond me. Patricia assured me that the meticulous documentation we had gathered made it nearly impossible for them to deny responsibility. Every intercepted letter, every forged signature, every social media lie, all evidence of a pattern that could no longer be ignored. The house listing went live a few weeks later, attracting cash buyers quickly. Standing in the empty rooms for the last time, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The home that had been a place of memories, joy, and betrayal was finally mine to release. Chloe wandered through the rooms, noting how empty they looked, yet smiling because the lies, the manipulation, and the theft were finally gone. Holding the check that represented our freedom, financial and emotional, I realized that fighting back, though exhausting and painful, was the only way to reclaim dignity and security. The aftermath of filing criminal charges was intense. Calls, emails, and court notifications became routine. David and Melissa alternated between desperation and denial, trying to spin the narrative that I was unstable, delusional, or overreacting. But the evidence was undeniable. Bank statements, credit card records, forged signatures, all carefully organized and authenticated by Patricia, painted a clear picture of deliberate, long-term exploitation. Every attempt they made to manipulate the situation backfired, and each time I felt more empowered. I wasn't just defending myself. I was exposing a dangerous pattern that might protect others. Chloe adjusted to life with me remarkably well. Even at 12, she understood the stakes. Schoolwork and extracurriculars became grounding forces, helping her reclaim the normalcy her parents had disrupted. Therapy sessions helped her navigate the emotional fallout, and I found myself learning alongside her. We shared small, everyday joys that had been missing for far too long, making pancakes on Saturday mornings, reading bedtime stories, and talking about dreams for the future. She had learned early that manipulation often masquerades as concern, and together we were creating a safe space, free from deceit. As the case progressed, Jennifer Wells's contribution proved invaluable. Her sworn statement regarding Melissa's prior exploitation of their grandmother gave the prosecution a historical pattern of behavior. It showed that Melissa wasn't merely acting under David's influence. She had demonstrated this predatory behavior before. The authorities realized they were dealing with a repeat offender with a methodical, almost sociopathic approach to financial exploitation. Knowing this, I felt a strange mix of vindication and horror. Melissa's charm, carefully cultivated on social media and among friends, masked a relentless pursuit of control over vulnerable family members. The court proceedings were grueling. Each hearing demanded patience, composure, and attention to detail. Patricia's preparation was meticulous. She anticipated every argument David and Melissa might present, and she ensured that the narrative of isolation theft and manipulation was clear to the judge. The evidence of intercepted mail, falsified financial documents, and social media lies became central to proving the deliberate nature of the crimes. Watching them squirm in court, accustomed as they were to controlling appearances, was deeply satisfying. Their polished facades crumbled under scrutiny. During this time, I reflected on how I had allowed myself to be vulnerable to their scheme. The first months after Tom's death were a blur of grief, loneliness, and trusting my own family to act with integrity. I had believed in their concern, thinking that temporarily relocating and helping them settle in my house was an act of generosity. Instead, it became a trap that allowed them to redirect my life, my money, and my autonomy. I realized that the grief made me blind to certain red flags, but it also gave me the motivation to fight once I understood the betrayal. That clarity born of betrayal became my most powerful weapon. Chloe's presence in my life reminded me why I couldn't back down. The idea that she could be manipulated, abandoned, or left vulnerable because of her parents' greed was unacceptable. Her innocence and intelligence made her acutely aware of the stakes, but she also showed resilience that surprised me. Even in the midst of legal battles and emotional turmoil, we found moments of joy, like building her treehouse in the backyard of my new Asheville home. The sign she hung above it read, "Eleanor and Chloe's Clubhouse. No drama queens allowed." I smiled every time I saw it, a reminder that we were reclaiming our lives together. Eventually, restitution and criminal sentencing moved forward. David pled guilty to identity theft, credit fraud, and elder abuse. The court ordered full repayment of $127,000, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Melissa received 18 months of community service, a reduced sentence, in part due to her following David's lead, but the testimony from Jennifer and evidence of her prior actions limited her ability to claim innocence. The process took over a year, with careful monitoring to ensure the restitution was enforced. The funds recovered covered a significant portion of the losses, though not all. Even so, the legal victory brought far more than financial restitution. It restored control, dignity, and a sense of justice. Through it all, I realized the importance of vigilance, self-respect, and refusing to be manipulated even by those who claim to love you. I volunteered at the Regional Elder Abuse Prevention Center, using my experience to educate others about financial exploitation, identity theft, and the subtle ways relatives can manipulate elderly family members. Every story I heard, every case I assisted with, reminded me how critical it was to speak up, document evidence, and set firm boundaries. Chloe and I were finally free to live without fear, without manipulation, and without the looming shadow of betrayal. The house we purchased together symbolized not just financial independence, but freedom from those who had sought to control us. Each day, we built a life anchored in honesty, safety, and genuine love, with the lessons of the past guiding our choices. Life after the trial settled into a new rhythm, quiet, but full of purpose. Chloe's laughter echoed through the rooms of our Asheville home, and I watched her flourish in ways that would have been impossible under her parents' manipulative influence. Mornings began with the scent of fresh coffee and pancakes, and evenings were filled with reading stories or helping her with homework. It was a life I had never allowed myself to fully embrace before peaceful, intentional, and free of pretense. Even so, the shadow of the past lingered. There were moments when a phone buzzed with an unknown number or an unexpected package arrived that sent a ripple of unease through me. Each of these moments reminded me that the battle with David and Melissa had not only been about property or money, it had been about control. They had sought to dictate my life and mine alone, turning every act of kindness into an opportunity for theft or manipulation. Recognizing this pattern and standing firm against it had been both terrifying and empowering. Jennifer's involvement became an unexpected blessing. Her knowledge of Melissa's prior actions, coupled with her willingness to provide sworn testimony, ensured that the courts treated my case seriously. She and I stayed in occasional contact, discussing the ways financial predators exploit familial trust and how to educate others to prevent similar abuse. I realized that my struggle could serve as a warning, a guidepost for those who might not see the danger until it is too late. Through Jennifer, I also learned the long history of Melissa's manipulations, and it was clear that she had been grooming a pattern of exploitation for decades. Understanding this gave me perspective. It wasn't just me. It was a series of victims, and by taking a stand, I might prevent others from suffering the same fate. Chloe became the center of our lives, and through her, I discovered a renewed sense of purpose. Her trust in me, her willingness to confide in me, and her eagerness to reclaim a normal, happy childhood reminded me that family could be redefined on healthier terms. We built routines together, celebrated milestones, and created traditions that emphasized honesty, respect, and mutual care. Every treehouse beam, every shared meal, every bedtime story was a silent declaration we were no longer bound by the deceit of the past. As the months passed, I continued to monitor my finances with vigilance, ensuring no residual accounts or charges remained unaccounted for. Patricia's guidance was invaluable. She helped me establish safeguards and alerted me to the subtle ways fraudsters might attempt to exploit elderly individuals. The process was tedious, but it was empowering. I no longer felt vulnerable. I felt competent, capable, and aware. This wasn't just about recovering money, it was about reclaiming autonomy and peace of mind. The house we purchased in Asheville was more than a residence. It was a sanctuary. It represented a fresh start away from the manipulation and betrayal that had defined the last 3 years. Every corner held the promise of safety, every room the potential for joy, and every window offered a view unclouded by fear or resentment. The treehouse Chloe built with the neighbor's child became our little fortress of trust, imagination, and creativity, and the sign she hung over the entrance, Eleanor and Chloe's clubhouse. No drama queens allowed, was a constant, joyful reminder of how far we'd come. Despite the legal resolution, I remained aware that trust once broken can never be fully restored. David's occasional attempts to contact us from prison were met with brief, measured responses. He had lost access to the autonomy and privilege he once took for granted, and I made it clear that any attempt to manipulate or coerce would be met with immediate legal action. Melissa's reduced sentence and community service reinforced the consequences of her choices, and her estrangement from Jennifer reflected the long-term effects of her behavior. For Chloe, these boundaries provided security and clarity. She understood that actions have consequences and that standing up for oneself and others is both necessary and empowering. I often reflected on the lessons learned. The grief following Tom's death had left me vulnerable, but it had also revealed the importance of vigilance and self-respect. The deception and theft orchestrated by my own family underscored the need for clear boundaries and documented agreements, even with those we love. And most importantly, protecting the innocent, like Chloe, required courage, foresight, and sometimes confrontation. My journey had transformed me from a grieving widow into a fiercely capable advocate for myself and others. In volunteering at the Elder Abuse Prevention Center, I encountered countless stories of manipulation, financial exploitation, and betrayal. Every person I helped reminded me that vigilance and documentation can save lives. My story became a blueprint for others, a testament to the power of refusing to be silenced, ignored, or exploited. I had been taught by betrayal to trust, cautiously act decisively, and stand unwaveringly for justice. Looking at Chloe building her treehouse under a warm Carolina sun, I realized that life, despite its darkest turns, can still offer moments of beauty, love, and liberation. We had reclaimed what was taken from us, not just material possessions, but dignity, autonomy, and the ability to shape our lives on our own terms. The past 3 years had been a battlefield, but the victory was more than legal. It was emotional, moral, and profoundly liberating. The following months were a delicate balance between reclaiming life and maintaining vigilance. Chloe thrived in her new school, making friends who valued honesty and inclusivity, and her teachers often remarked on her maturity and thoughtfulness. Watching her grow, I saw the tangible results of protecting her from the chaos and deceit that had surrounded her parents. It was a bittersweet victory. Her parents' absence was a void, but it was one filled with safety, stability, and love. Occasionally, the past would try to creep back in. A call from a debt collector mistakenly linked to one of David's fraudulent accounts, a suspicious email, or even a chance encounter in town, reminded me of the vigilance necessary to prevent predators from continuing their schemes. Each time I felt the familiar surge of anger and determination, but it was tempered now by experience, knowledge, and support. I had learned that fighting back did not have to be reactive. It could be strategic, precise, and empowered. In the evenings, Chloe and I would sit on the balcony of our new home, sharing takeout, sipping iced tea, and talking about our days. She loved recounting school adventures, new friendships, and small victories. Sometimes she asked questions about her parents, her voice laced with curiosity and confusion. I answered honestly, but age-appropriately, never demonizing them, simply explaining that their choices had consequences, and that we now had a safe space where truth, respect, and love guided our lives. These moments reinforced my understanding of how trauma could be mitigated through transparency and consistent care. I also reconnected with friends and family I had distanced myself from during the years of manipulation and grief. These relationships, once strained, began to heal. It was both humbling and gratifying to witness the support and empathy of people who had been watching, waiting for me to reclaim my voice and agency. Volunteering at the Elder Abuse Prevention Center became more than a charitable act. It became a personal mission. I shared my story in seminars and workshops, helping others recognize subtle forms of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. Each time I spoke, I could see faces light up with understanding, and sometimes people would tearfully confide their own experiences. It was a reminder that my battle, painful as it was, had a purpose beyond my own survival. Financially, life was more stable than it had been in years. The proceeds from the house sale provided security and restitution payments, though partial, further reinforced that justice, when pursued methodically, could restore some measure of balance. The legal system, while imperfect, had upheld my rights and punished deliberate abuse. Each financial document I signed, each bank account I opened with protective measures, became a testament to the autonomy I had fought so hard to reclaim. I had been forced into vigilance, but it was now a tool for empowerment rather than fear. One quiet afternoon while Chloe napped and the house was filled with the soft hum of a ceiling fan, I sat on the deck with a journal. Writing had always been a private solace, but now it became a way to process the enormity of what we had endured. I reflected on the layers of betrayal, the meticulous planning by my own family, and the resilience required to reclaim both our lives and our dignity. I wrote about boundaries, justice, and the importance of refusing to accept harmful narratives imposed by others. And I wrote about love, the kind that is chosen deliberately, not assumed or taken for granted. It was in these quiet moments that I realized the full magnitude of our transformation. Chloe and I had been through a crucible of manipulation, theft, and deceit, and emerged not only intact, but stronger. Our lives were no longer dictated by fear or control, but by choice, empowerment, and mutual respect. The treehouse in the backyard, simple yet sturdy, became a symbol of that freedom. Every plank, every nail, every sign we hung together was a declaration that we belonged to each other and to no one else's whims. I often thought about the lessons for others who might be watching, listening, or reading our story. Trust, while precious, must be balanced with vigilance. Kindness and generosity are virtues, but they must not come at the expense of self-respect or safety. And perhaps most importantly, fighting back against betrayal, especially from those who claim to love you, is not cruel or unkind. It is an act of self-preservation and moral responsibility. By standing firm, we not only protect ourselves, but also prevent further harm to the innocent. Now, as Chloe and I watch the sun dip below the Carolina hills, I feel a profound sense of closure and liberation. The past cannot be undone, but it has shaped a life that is stronger, more deliberate, and richer in meaningful connections. We laugh freely, dream openly, and live without apology. The lessons are clear. Vigilance, courage, and love for those who truly deserve it are the pillars of a life reclaimed from betrayal. If our story resonates with you, take a moment to share it. Like, comment, and subscribe so others can learn that it is never too late to fight for your rights, protect those you love, and reclaim your peace. Your voice matters, your action matter, and you are never powerless when you choose to stand.